feature presentation.
The best in the world is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome. All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and JCap.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Alliance Guys podcast. I'm your host, Jay Cal, but this is a special night, special time for a special reason. That's because this guy right here, Alexander Hammerstone, your MLW Openweight Champion, week out when you're carrying those belts to all your shows.
I've lost count. It's, with shows not running in for a couple months, I probably have a couple dusty belts in the closet I've forgotten about. But as things start to get back to normal, I'll start digging them back out, and I'll get you an official answer on that.
And of course, guys, we're joined by DKM, who's right over here, and then of course, the modern day hero, the former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion, Kevin Frazier. Alliance guys, we're here, we're assembled, we're getting positive, we're staying positive. We got Alexander Hammerstone, of course, who recently made his debut, in the last couple of weeks. He's been on Primetime Live now twice, defending the likes of EJ Sparks and Steve Tresaro, the Red Snapper. And, the word around town, Hammerstone, is that, you're the guy. You're the guy. When people watch you step into that ring, there's no argument that you're the guy. You're built bigger than most. You wrestle better than most. You look better than most. Am I wrong, Kev? Help me out on this one.
Well, and let's not forget, the only reason I even got back to going onto Twitter was because Hammerstone has the best Twitter account you can follow. So and again, I hold nothing back when I have good things to say about somebody, but you're looking at probably the most complete heavyweight wrestler in the wrestling scene going right now. So I'm excited to have him on the show. Old friend of mine. Always knew he was going to be great. It's so cool to watch him stepping into that role of what I think is the guy to talk about right now in all of professional wrestling. So congrats, buddy.
I appreciate that. That was quite the little introduction.
And I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard from other podcasts. Gary Horn is a good friend of mine. He's put you over so much on the This is the NWA podcast, and I kind of feel like we got a nice little dig at him because we got you here on the Alliance Guys podcast before they could get you. And, they, much like us, they talk about the NWA, they talk about the United Wrestling Network, but let's make no mistake about it. You're a breakout star. You can be seen in future stars of wrestling. Folks are familiar with you with MLW. Some people might think of this as like a meteoric rise, but you've been at this for a while. You've been grinding. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings and how you got into the business. I know that that you worked with Hawaiian Lion, John Williams, and the Navajo Warrior, and broken with those guys. Can you tell us about your experience working with the tribe and getting into the business?
Yeah, so like you said, a lot further back than some people realize, because things have really just taken off for me years. But it's been years. But yeah, getting started. He was a lucha guy, and so I was originally trained very lucha style.
What?
Jay, just so you know, we're getting a little feedback.
Yeah. I'm kind of hearing it too. Here.
It's not good.
Everything all good?
think I'm good. DK?
I'm good.
Yeah, you sound like you normally sound. So we're good.
Watch it.
So broken with Lucha. That's interesting. That's interesting. And so you broke in with the Hawaiian Lion and with the Tribe.
Yeah, I had always for years. I started training with guys like the Hawaiian Lion and stuff, and basically, you know, I could do all the movements and all the motion, all the athletic stuff, but I had no sense of like ring psychology whatsoever.
Right.
So by the time I thought I was a hot shot because I was really good at like the physical part of things, but I had no idea like how to do a wrestling. And and like everything I did, it was like why? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like,
look cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I do a lot of like lucha stuff, like weird like flipping arm drags and like do like a 450, and there's like, why are you doing it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. Just to break in, because things about you now is not. I mean, you're great in the ring. I mean, you throw one of the best drop kicks out there, but it's your character and the story that makes you the most interesting. What a road, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, like, you go through a career, like, what you're focusing on kind of changes, and I was always like, every time I got to like the next level of like where I was at, I'd like kind of take that step back and like think about what I was missing, and between injuries and getting to a certain size, and all these, you start realizing like physical limitations, and then risk associated with these things. Like you see guys that go out and have like a car crash match. That's cool, but when you do it 50 times,
yeah,
it you burn out, you crash eventually. But
so how did you end up in the United Wrestling Network?
Well, is this feedback coming from me, you guys think, or
what's that?
This feedback? I don't know how bad it is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Okay. Well, as far as the United Wrestling Network, I had worked. So I have a history. I'd worked with Dave Marquez, who is playing like, I think he's pretty much the head honcho there. I'd worked with some of his other companies, but Wrestling from Hollywood, Wrestling from Arizona, over the years. So he's obviously familiar with me as a talent, but then in addition to that, United Wrestling Network has working relationship with West Coast Pro Wrestling, where I'm in their heavyweight championship. So that was when I first got involved with them, I didn't even know it was the United Wrestling Network. I just kind of got hit up from the guy who runs West Coast Pro, and it was, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're partnering with some people. Are you down? And I was just, yeah, of course. I hadn't wrestled in months. I was ready to do anything. So I was agreeing to, just get back in the ring before I really knew what I was getting into. And then it turned out to be the Primetime Live show, which was something a little bit cooler than I expected.
I mean, Dave Marquez runs an amazing, and I say this all the time, an amazing production. And, guys, I wouldn't consider myself as much of a body guy as you would be. But for me, when you go 10, you're dieting, you spend the money on the gear, you want to look the best you can look when you get to go out there. And I think one of the things I loved about working for Dave is he would bend over backwards to make the wrestlers look as good as they could on TV. And again, getting to see you come out, in a large, in a large entrance type setting, just in that environment with that kind of production, that's the kind of stage you belong on that does you the best justice as far as I'm concerned. So it's great to get to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, it's so much easier to get in the zone and get into the mind frame that you need to really put on a killer performance. It's so hard to tap into that character and tap into that that kind of mindset you need to really put on when you're at some little rinky-dink show that's in middle of a parking lot, or there's 10 fans, and it's just like when you have the lights and the music and the stage setup and all those moving pieces, it just facilitates you to go out there and kind of perform to your highest level.
That makes sense. You take it seriously. Go ahead, D. Go ahead, D.
What's it like working in a empty building, so to speak, with no fans? Is it more of a struggle, or is it better if you're in there with 200, 300, 500 more fans?
So I expected it to be more of a struggle than it was. For me, it was easy for me. Especially kind of treating, having the cameras to, be aware of, kind of becomes your new fans. It was a little bit strange for me because I have like the psychology of the match going into the match, but then I also am constantly adjusting that depending on the crowd. So not having the crowd there, I just have to kind of go with my gut instinct, which could be correct in a vacuum. Like there's, that was a good match in this, like in what I thought was like supposed to be presented for this thing, but it's like, I feel like there's just like the really good matches come when you're not only presenting the story you want to tell, but you're adjusting the nuances to fit the reactions that you're getting, like in real time. So not having that makes it a bit of a challenge. But I found the biggest thing for me is working with guys in these settings, because I've had to do it a couple times now. Is I feel like some guys, especially newer guys, feel like they just have to keep doing something because there's no sound, there's no reaction, there's no audience doing anything, so they feel like, oh, I got to keep moving. And I was like, no, just stay down, just calm down, relax. It's definitely an adjustment, but it's something that I feel like I adjusted to pretty quickly.
It's interesting you say, sorry, Devin, but it's interesting you say they feel like they've got to do something. There is this cool thing that we have in wrestling. It's called selling. Yeah.
But they got to do more moves, brother.
You bring up an interesting point in that there's a lot of ring psychology that goes into it. And, I'm the grumpy old guy. I've been watching wrestling since the late 70s. Got really into it in the early 80s. I was here in Texas as a teenager during the Von Erich's heyday. And so, I'm that grumpy old fan.
Yeah.
But you're one of the people that I watch and I go, now here's a guy who gets it. I don't know how much time you've ever spent watching the old stuff, but you get it. You get that psychology. You get that need for when to pick it up, when to slow it down. So to drive to my question, is that something that you've had trouble with these days when working with people? Is that they do kind of want to go 100 miles an hour from the time the bell rings until the match is over? Or are you finding it, most guys out there are getting it?
I don't feel that most guys out there are getting it. If anything, I feel like a large percentage of people, this is pulling back the curtain a little bit, but a large percentage of people think they get it because they get it on the most surface level, where they go, I did a shine and a cutoff and a heat, and I'm the baby face and you're the heel, and it's like, that's not getting it. Like, that's like saying I understand, the medical profession because I watch House. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same thing.
Right.
So, but I will say this is, I feel like generally, like, people are very perceptive to being led when you have a lot of confidence. So I by no means like think I control everything in the world, but like when I'm working with guys and like when you're in the ring, and I 99% of the time am lead. Like I just like to, whether I'm fighting from underneath or fighting on top, and people are generally very perceptive to that. And now that I'm starting to get up there in years in business, like, not that I'm like some respected vet or something like that, but a lot of like, we kind of have like the short attention span era where like these new young guys are like getting a lot of exposure real quick. So a lot of times I work with guys who are 3-4 years in. So when I kind of like want to shift what they want to do a little bit, they're usually very perceptive to it. It's like I don't run into a lot of hotheads who are so hell-bent on doing things their way. And it's not necessarily about not including, certain types of moves or spots or anything like that. It's just about like figuring out how it works within the grand scheme of things.
So my question for you, Hammerstone, is what talents? I mean, you face such a dichotomy of opponents because I mean, you're not just in one area. You're all over the country. I mean, MLW, West Coast Pro Wrestling, the promotions in Arizona, of course, Primetime Live. Who are some of the opponents that you faced recently who you feel like could take that next level? Could be somebody like you, be in your shoes.
I mean, so that's the $1 million question, because I'm like, because of my role in MLW, like I'm constantly kind of scanning out there, like who's a guy that we could use, who's a guy that fits on TV, who's a guy that checks all those boxes. And man, everyone's scooped up now. Everyone's under a contract somewhere. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you have like slightest bit of talent, buzz, and a good look, like someone's trying to give you a contract. So I'm constantly kind of looking at it, and like, I guess one guy who comes to mind, like whenever that kind of conversation comes up, is Moonshine Mantell out in Texas. He's a guy who, like, he's got a look, he's got a decent promo, he's got good ring psychology, he's very aggressive, like style of wrestling, which I like. So I'm a big fan of his. But man, as far as guys who aren't already scooped up somewhere, I'm very critical when it comes to that question. I don't just go, hey, I have a good match with this guy. I think of how they fit on a program, like what makes them a character that's going to be good week to week to week. Because I think what we've seen a lot, I think you guys will all agree with this, is guys get a lot of buzz. They're like the next big thing. Then they put them on TV and no one cares because they don't have something that you want to see week after week. They have a cool match for Twitter or a cool gift that go viral, but they're not a character that people are going to invest their time and money in week after week on a television program.
Right. So we had a question from the chat room here and this is for me, when I was wrestling, this was like a cuss word. So this is gonna be fun. I hated answering this question because to me, I never want to think about this. But now that I'm in it, I can mess with you a little bit. So what are your plans after in-ring competition from Terry McDermott?
That's a hard one because I definitely I definitely want to hurry up and make my money and be able to get out before. I don't want to overstay my welcome. But I'm not sure. I'm hoping that I have enough of a cushion so that I don't have to rush into whatever's next in my chapter. But I do like teaching wrestling, but honestly, I think by the time I'm getting out, I'm not going to want to teach it anymore. I think I'm going to want to really be removed from it and focus on the next chapter of my life. My background before wrestling was culinary. I worked in kitchens as a chef or as a butcher. And I might fucking open a restaurant or something like that. Who knows?
That's awesome.
I'll be there.
Hamburger.
The hamburger, yeah. Oh, the brother burger.
Brother burgers.
That's great. I always extend this offer to many wrestlers. I had a really rough exit from the industry. Not that the industry did anything to me, but I made it hard on myself. And some guys that I won't name publicly that have since left wrestling, reached out to me, asked me how I ended up making that transition. Because it's tough going from being in front of hundreds or thousands of fans one weekend, and the next weekend you're in the gym by yourself and nobody cares and nobody's calling. It's rough. So, whenever you're crossing that bridge, Just letting you know, I'll be around if you ever need to talk about it, because it can be, the first few months, man, it is brutal. But anyways, moving on, I had a question I wanted to ask, and this is totally back into the now. So when we met, you were already impressive. You're already kind of a main event guy. This was 2013, 2014. But you had the long hair. You wore the trunks. Matches were you did a lot more stuff in your matches, which, you know, I think as you get more mature in this, you start to become less of a fan of that sometimes.
Yep.
Same way for me. I always tell these guys, I'm like, I love when two big dudes just get in there and yell at each other for 5 minutes. I love it. You know, hit a bunch of poses and yell. You know, I love that. So, you know, you cut your hair, you went to the jeans, your look changed. Something about your personality got a little lighter. I don't know what that was. You know, what inspired that? Because that was a big turn for you. What did that? You were already successful. You did but it seemed like to be that thing for me as kind of a Hammerstone fan. That was the thing that kind of pushed you over the top for me. What led to that?
So I had a really, really rough year. Basically, between, you know, when you met me and then like 2018, I had tryouts with every major company, you know, and even the last time I was with WWE, you know, I'm not trying to like crap on them as a company, but it basically got to the point where it was like a handshake deal, you're hired, and the process was going through. And I remember crying when I got this email from them, like, and I was at work and I showed my head chef this email, and he called a staff meeting to tell everybody that I just got hired by WWE. And as we're going through the process, it's going, and then like 5 months down the road, I'm like waiting for my people, and I'm like emailing back. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's the next step? Like, when are we doing this? 'Cause, you know, I'm supposed to be moving out to Florida like in 6 weeks, and then they're just like, hey, sorry, we hired too many people. We're not going to bring you in right now. That's all I got. And I was like, and it just like shattered my world. And I was, for months after that, I'm still dealing with like every once in a while someone at work would be like, hey, so when are you moving out to Florida? And I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, what happened? And I just have to tell this story over and over and over again, you know. And it's like you said, I was pretty successful, but I had been doing the same thing for like almost 2 years. Like I was like at the top of a lot of the same indies, and it's like, okay, well, I'd get flown out here and there. You know, I'd been to Japan, but I wasn't making enough money to just wrestle. I wasn't under a contract, and I was like, man, I was really just thinking about being done, to be honest. I was like, I remember having a couple conversations about being done. And I toyed around with the idea of like one last change, and I got to the point where I had a catalyst of like, okay, cut your hair. And I cut the hair, and I was like, well, if I'm going to cut my hair, I might as well go all in and just go for it. And it basically was like my version of saying, I'm not going to try to do anything by anyone's rules. You know, I'm not going to try to be this big tough guy Thor lookalike. I'm not going to cut a certain type of promo. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to dress however I want. I'm going to wrestle however I want. I'm going to promo however I want. And it got me some, right off the bat, some backlash. There were some companies who were like, we're taking you off our shows. This was a bad idea. And it's like, it got me some instant backlash, but within a couple months, that's when MLW said, hey, here's your contract. Do you want to sign it? You know? So for me, yeah, it was basically just wanting to quit so bad that I didn't care if this change cost me everything. Because I was like, well, I'm going to do this, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, I honestly don't care. You know, this is my last go. And, it worked out for the best. And now, like you said, like my personality being a little bit lighter and stuff, like I can do whatever I want because I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to be anybody. I'm cutting promos in, you know, a conversational aspect. I'm not putting on my promo voice or talking about these, you know, trying to think of metaphors to describe these matches. I'm just like, I'm me. And it's
Tonight
like
talk.
mustache, so it's made things a lot easier, in that regard.
So Hammerstone, I have a
Man,
couple
that's
questions
awesome.
for you. Recently, I happened to listen to one of Jim Cornette's podcasts, and he specifically said you were one of those guys that he would like to, if he were still in the managing business, you were one of those guys he wanted to manage. What does something like that mean to a guy like you? I mean, the compliments from high praise, Cornette's in some circles a wrestling god. How do you feel when you hear praise like that?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, in the last, basically 2 years, thanks to Twitter, Cornette has become extremely controversial. But that you can't deny his knowledge of the business. You can't deny what he brings to the table. And I worked with him in MLW he was there, I believe, 2 trips, which means I got to work with him for 3 days at a time. And man, like, that guy is just a wealth of knowledge. It's insane, like, how quickly he's able to come up with these ideas. Like, you give him, an inch, and he tells you how to stretch it into a mile. So it's like, not only do I have, like, my memories of him in the business, like, I know personally, like, how smart that guy is for wrestling, and yeah, he's cynical, and yeah, he's controversial, and yeah, he said a lot of shit that people don't like, but at the end of the day, to earn his respect, it's a feather in my cap. It's still really cool.
And now sticking with MLW, I mean, I know they're about to kind of get back to it. In fact, I think you might have already had some matches that have taken place. But with your contract with MLW, because I know, I've seen you on Primetime Live, which is a weekly episodic pay-per-view. I'm assuming that when PCW Ultra starts running again, you'll make appearances for them. What is your contract like for MLW, and how freely are you able to work?
I don't want to get into too much of the nitty-gritty, but basically any of the other top major North American companies are kind of out of the question. People are always like, oh, are you going to go challenge Cody Rhodes on AEW, or what about showing up on Impact? Like, that's not going to happen. Obviously, never say never, because if the boss man at the top wants something to happen, it's going to happen. But that being said, all indies are basically up. I have a lot of freedom. Stuff like Primetime Live, something that's going to be either televised or on iPay-per-view or something of that nature. It's just something where it's got to basically be cleared with the office. And, I'm in a position there where they do want to protect how I'm used. So, I'm not going to just be going out and doing anything and everything. But at the same time, I'm in a position there where they want to make sure I'm happy with my contract. So they're going to do their best to do the things that I want to do. So there's a lot of freedom. Stuff like Primetime Live is, something I should continue to be able to do. Indies, when they start opening up, is something I'm going to be able to do, and then overseas stuff is something I'm going to be able to do. The only stuff that's a definite out of the question for the time being is, the Monday nights and the Wednesday nights.
Aaron, I got 2 questions of my own for you.
Yeah.
The first one is, since we're talking MLW, a small dream match for me might be you versus the world champion there, Jacob Fatu. So I'm certainly sure you would like to challenge for that title, wouldn't you?
Man, at this point, that seems to be like the talk. Like, it just comes up over and over and over again. It's like the roads are gonna have to converge at some point. And I won the National Openweight Championship over a year ago, and so I basically the pace, the tone that I set for that championship was going to be, what it meant moving forward. And I think it's got to the point where there's almost 2 heavyweight champions in the company. It's gotten to the point where there's 2 main event guys, and it's like the shows. Sometimes it's his show, and sometimes it's my show, and it's getting to a point where who's ever the top dog is going to have to, be the top dog. Like, we're not going to be sharing the spotlight at the very top for much longer. So I've got to imagine that in the foreseeable future, we're going to be colliding.
Woo! All right. I'm happy to hear something like that. Now, my next thing is, of course, Jacob Patu is a big guy. Now, I've seen you wrestle in person when you were here in Texas, and you're talking about Moonshine Mantel. I watched you take on Moonshine. And Moonshine is another big guy. And I'm not sure how tall you are, but I've seen on your Twitter account, you go between 255, 260. You're a big, strong man that takes me back to my early 80s days of wrestling. And so, what kind of opponent do you like to get in the ring with? Do you like to get in the ring with other big guys like yourself, or like Trevor Murdoch, who's a big, strong guy and a different build, but, still a big, strong guy? Or do you like, they say Brock Lesnar actually like to get in the ring with some of the smaller guys like Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan, and that type of stuff? Do you have a preference?
I don't know if I'd have a preference necessarily. I mean, I like all of it, because I definitely had a preference like early in my career. I loved wrestling like the smaller guys and just tossing them around and hitting power moves and all that stuff. But in recent year, I've kind of liked being pulled out of my comfort zone, because when you just wrestle the type of match you like, you just kind of play the hits, and I don't. You just kind of resting on your laurels, and it's like I liked getting put in uncomfortable positions where I had to. That's what forces you to grow and create like new psychology in your matches. Is okay, I've never been in this situation before. What would I do here? How would I approach this? So I don't really have a favorite anymore. I'm always just like, I like the challenge of having a match and going, man, how am I going to approach this, and trying to do something new. Because as much as it's fun to catch a luchador and press slam him over and over and over again, I like when I come up with something new and I get to go, man, oh, that was cool. Like, and it's because it's, for me, it's cool because it's the first time I did something,
Yeah, I really like the storytelling character aspect of wrestling. These days anymore, I don't get nearly as upset if the matches aren't flawless or seamless, because it's supposed to be a little bit of a struggle. But yeah. I really enjoy the character and the storytelling. So like what you're saying, that's the kind of stuff I like to watch. Yep. The stuff where I get to watch, maybe a story I haven't seen told before, because I don't know how many times I'm going to have to see, the heel cut the baby face off, the heel no-sell the baby face's 5 minutes to shine, the manager get involved, and I'm like, like we've been telling this story since the 50s. Yep. So I do enjoy the adherence to psychology that we all know works, but just using some innovation with that. So I have some really good questions here. My first question would be, so we both seem to share a little bit of a overly fanboy nature with Hulk Hogan. With the Hogan 10, after your bodybuilding show, I was so disappointed and not know that you didn't hit the thing at your show. The heck with all the people there. Kevin Douglas wanted to see the most muscular and the Hogan thing, but whatever. So if you could face Hogan, any Hogan rendition that you could pick, which Hogan would you face? Hollywood, 94 WCW before the Hollywood, 92? Are we going like Iron Sheik? Are we going the white trunks Hulk Hogan? Underlips? What are we doing?
I'd have to say 91, 92. Like that era where Hulkamania was for sure still running wild. It wasn't starting to get bitter at all. Yeah. I think that's the era of Hogan you want to work with.
And that was the most tan Hogan.
That's possibly the like the 2004 WWE Hogan, because at that point too he was so over that, like he got that style of over where the fans knew that he wasn't physically capable of a lot, and they accommodated like their perception accordingly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like they didn't.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, I feel like fans nowadays are like, "Oh, you suck, get out." But like back then, they had such respect that they're like, "It's okay, take your time. We know you're old." You know what I'm saying?
We just want to see it. We just want to see it.
Yeah, watch the match.
So, okay, my next question, and it's along the same lines, and if I get a chance, I'll have one more final question. So Devin brought up, world-class wrestling. I myself grew up on world-class wrestling. 8 years old, Kerry Von Erich. First push-ups I ever did was because of the Kerry Von Erich montage. I'm doing push-ups in my living room as a little kid in Fort Worth, Texas. But again, they also had this guy on the show who was my second favorite wrestler. His name was the Dingo Warrior, and eventually went on to become the Ultimate Warrior. So I need to know: are you going now? This could be who you'd rather wrestle, or just who's your favorite. Are we going Kerry or Ultimate Warrior?
I'd go Warrior.
They're both the Warrior.
Ultimate though.
Ultimate Warrior. Okay. All right. That's of course. So I'd say Kerry, but we can agree to disagree on that. But yeah, two guys that honestly, I don't think I'd be in wrestling. And again, that's just the kind of wrestler I typically like. I'm gonna elbow in here and get my final question, and then I'll let the guys have it. Okay, so I know you play guitar.
Yep.
I know you get on the guitar. In fact, some of the stuff you were doing on Twitter during quarantine was probably some of the best wrestling stuff going on. Doing deadlifts out in your parking lot, just stuff like that. I thought that's the kind of stuff that other wrestlers were trying to do. They just weren't doing it. I don't know how else to say it. So who is your favorite guitar player?
Oof, that's hard because as much as like I play guitar, I'm a drummer. Like guitar is definitely my second instrument. So like
right.
was the thing I was fascinated with and always like appreciated drummers and studied drummers. And then guitar was just like something I noodled with in the background.
Right.
But living in a condo now, I play guitar because I can't fucking drum and my neighbors have me kicked out a week. But man, obscure answer is Nick Valenci, and he's a guitar player from the Strokes.
Okay.
Because I learning all their songs was like how I got good at guitar. Interesting.
Well, hey, you know what? That's all I got. I'm a Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of guy, but I guess again I'm a Texan. So, all right, cool. Well, that's all I got. As far as I'm concerned, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm sure the guys have some more stuff to throw out at you, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Well, we're definitely sensitive to your time, and again, we appreciate you being here with us. I just wanted to ask a few more questions. When everyone talks about Hammerstone and we see the dominance that you've shown in West Coast pro wrestling and how much of a dominance force you've become for MLW, but tell us about working in Pro Wrestling Noah. It's not very often a wrestler gets an opportunity to showcase its talents in Japan. Pro Wrestling Noah is one of the breakaways from All Japan Pro Wrestling, that whole strong style of wrestling. Tell us about your time in Noah and what your thoughts were on that tour that you had working with Pro Wrestling Noah.
That might be my favorite all-time period of wrestling, just because of it was like it's kind of like what we talked about earlier with like having to approach things differently, having to up your game, having to up your psychology. Because basically from the get-go there, I was like kind of thrown out of a comfort zone. Not only was my very first match there like a 25-minute main event versus Go Shiozaki, but like I remember one of my very first matches there, like going at it and like trying to be like this American heel and powerbomb the guy on the apron. I turned to the crowd, I was like, "That's how we do it in America." And they like the white flat, and I was like, "Oh." Like, completely stopped like trying to be like anything over the top, anything that's too like, pro wrestling, and I just tried to be a freaking wrestler, like, and I just tried to give my best like all out every single night, you know, and it was just such a fun time. And especially like Japanese wrestling in general, you know, is different than American wrestling, but like even New Japan, like I feel has become very Americanized over the last couple of years. Just with such an influx of American talent and also just like the outreach that they have, it's almost been like a little bit of pressure to change. Whereas pro wrestling is like still very, very traditional Japanese style wrestling, you know. So man, it was so fun. It was just cool to be in that world of like we're on tour every night. You're on the bus, new city, new, you know, go out there, wrestle, hit the gym, get back on the bus, go to the next city. You know, it was really fun living that life. You know, obviously, I got super homesick after a couple weeks, but I cannot freaking wait to go back to Japan. I think that upped my game on a whole nother level, and like that evolution of like my time spent there is like something that I think is translated to all my matches moving forward.
There's been a couple of questions in the chat room, and I want to just get to them before we call it a night. But the first thing is Woodland Goblin asked if you display your titles at home.
No, I do not. It's funny because the most I probably ever had was at like a given time was like 7 or 8, and maybe like I had them all on like a coffee table, but they were just kind of in a pile. Now I just like have them tucked away in a dresser. But I remember like a couple years ago, I had a different house and I was single, and I just started dating this new girl, and so I cleaned up everything, like redid my bedroom, reorganized everything, and I bought like a towel rack and like hung it, but I used it to hang my championships, and I had like 4 of them hanging like on a wall, and I remember she like laughed when she saw it. It was like, it was just such a crushing blow because I thought it was like so cool. Just, you know, I was like, well, I learned my lesson.
2 more questions, and then I'm going to hand it over to DK because I think he's got a few more questions he wants to ask. Dave Scooby says, would you ever want to do some tag team wrestling to help build up some other talents? Is that something that interests you in forming a tag team?
So right now, I'm definitely, I feel like I have a lot of goals centered around singles wrestling. And I feel like I'm in a position where I need to do those things. But, you know, there was different times in my career when I was doing long stints of tag team wrestling. In Paragon Pro Wrestling, I had a tag team with Alex Chamberlain. On the Indies, I tagged with Joe Graves, and we were the Gods of War. And then even in MLW, I've done some tagging with Richard Holiday and just like that. So I'll never say never, because even the Dynasty was something I was like hesitant about because I wanted I'm so like, oh, I want to do my thing. But if it works, it works. If you get linked up with somebody and you're gelling, I'm all for it. But I definitely don't want to like force anything just because like a promoter wants it. So I won't say no, but as far as like the immediate future, I definitely have some goals related to the singles stuff. So
awesome. So go ahead.
Well, I know DK had at least one more question, right, DK? Did you want to close it out for us?
I have one question to close this out. First of all, I do want to say what an honor it's been to talk to you. I truly believe you are one of the biggest rising stars in wrestling. I do like you, even the Von Erich boys and others are the future. And so, you know, this is a NWA show. So I know the contracts and politics and everything in wrestling, but how badly would you like to face Nick Aldis? This is the type of thing that you don't put in the drawer, you don't hang from the towel rack. What type of, how excited would you be to have a chance to face Nick Aldis, another big gentleman, by the for the 10 pounds of gold?
I mean, that's one of those questions that I see almost daily. I'm getting tagged on Twitter. Someone throwing it out there, someone saying they want to see it. I feel it's one of those questions that a lot of promoters ignore because it does raise some questions about, contracts and obligations, who's allowed to do what and where's it allowed to happen and all that nonsense. But if you took that out of the picture, it'd be something I'd jump at, and even all things considered, if we're able to make it happen, I'd love to. For not only the reason that, for the title on the line, but also just the guy holding it. They call this as someone who I'd really enjoy wrestling. I feel like that could be a really, really awesome match. So if the opportunity presents itself, that'd be really cool. But, all things considered, I don't know if that's something that's going to be on the table, but if someone puts it there, I'll be the first one to bite.
Awesome.
Hey,
Hey, we want to see it. So I'm going to say my goodbyes, and Jane, let you wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Kev. Say your goodbyes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, sweet. Hey, man, I just want to say thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. I know you got training, you got to eat, you got to sleep, and you got to dominate. And I know that's important stuff. And I just wish you the best. Thanks for taking the time to come on to the show. And again, when you're holding up all the cards and everything's going right in your favor, man, just don't forget the little guys. We appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you guys, man. This was awesome, guys. Super fun.
Hey, I would be remiss if we didn't plug the merch. So let's plug the merch, right? Pro Wrestling Tees, I believe, is where folks can head to and buy your merchandising. If this video is working, I hope it is. The folks on the screen right now will see a couple of your shirts, and of course, visit Pro Wrestling Tees to buy all of your exclusive Alexander Hammerstone merchandise. And of course, we do thank you for taking time to join us this evening. I know, like Kevin said, you're a very busy man, and we do appreciate your time. If folks want to follow you on social media, can plug your socials so that they can follow you.
Yes, sir. At Alex Hammerstone on Instagram and Twitter. Like Kevin said, if you don't like my wrestling, you might like my Twitter. But yeah, at Alex Hammerstone is that, and I'm Alexander Hammerstone on Facebook, and pretty interactive guy. I try to get back to all my fans and try to make an enjoyable, interactive experience for everyone as best I can.
Well, there it is. So, again, thank you for joining us, and everyone else, thank you for joining the Alliance guys. We're going to wrap it up tonight, right now. Please join us tomorrow night as we're back here in the same spot. We're doing our review of Primetime Live Episode 7. Hopefully, we'll see Hammerstone on a future episode, and we could sing his praises even more. But until next time, guys, that's going to do it for us. So, get positive, stay positive, and we'll see you at the matches. And that should be it.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, brother.